I was standing in the checkout line at a hardware store in Austin, holding a pack of light bulbs I didn't really need, when my phone buzzed. It was a group text from my family. My mother wrote, "Just confirming, your place will be perfect for Christmas this year." I remember rereading that line twice. Not asking, just confirming. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down on the counter and finished paying like nothing had happened. At the time, I was 33. I lived alone. I had just closed on a modern glass and steel house overlooking Lake Travis. It was quiet there. Water in the mornings, wind moving through the trees at night. I bought it because I wanted one place in my life that stayed still. I hadn't planned on telling my family yet. I posted a few photos online instead. Nothing flashy, just the deck, the view, a glass of champagne catching the light. The caption was simple: "Grateful for the life I'm building." That was all it took. Less than 24 hours later, my mother announced that my older brother and his wife would be using my house for the holidays. And somehow, everyone acted like that was normal. I grew up in Rollingwood, just outside Austin. If you know the area, you know the kind of families I mean. Quiet money, big homes, conversations that sounded polite but felt like evaluations. Our house was large, white, and carefully empty, like a place staged for photos instead of living. My mother, Diane, kept it immaculate. Nothing out of place, nothing personal. My father, Robert, worked in finance. His job was mostly dinners, calls, and being in the right rooms with the right people. And then there was my brother, Mark. 4 years older, always certain, always centered. From as early as I can remember, the house revolved around him. The formal living room, the one we were never allowed to use, was lined with his achievements. Framed certificates, golf trophies, photos of him shaking hands with men whose names I was told to remember. My accomplishments were kept in a cardboard box in the guest room closet. Design awards, scholarship letters, ribbons from competitions. Nothing damaged, just stored. I learned early how the system worked. On my 16th birthday, I came downstairs expecting breakfast plans. Instead, my parents were at the kitchen island, laptops open, looking at flights. My father didn't look up when he said, "We're heading to the East Coast this weekend. Mark's touring a school." I reminded them it was my birthday. My mother sighed like I'd asked for something unreasonable. "We'll celebrate later." They left that Friday. I ate takeout alone. We never rescheduled. Years later, in college, I found out through social media that they'd gone on a family cruise through Italy. My mother had posted photos with a caption about all of us together. I wasn't in a single picture. When I asked her about it, she said it was last minute and didn't want to bother me. That word stuck. Bother. By my early 20s, I understood my role. I wasn't included because I didn't need to be. I was the quiet one, the flexible one, the one who would understand. Or so they thought. Thanksgiving when I was 23 made it unmistakable. My father gave Mark a case of expensive wine for building a future. Then my mother slid me a single warm bottle of cheap white across the table. "Your aunt didn't want it." No one noticed my reaction. Conversation moved on without me. Years later, reading about family dynamics late one night, I finally found language for what I'd lived inside. The golden child and the extra one. The structure only worked if someone stayed small. I stayed in the family group chat after that. Mostly silent. Watching. 3 months before I bought the house, my father posted about Mark closing another deal, then added, "Some people choose stability, others play around." That was meant for me. 2 weeks later, my company was acquired. I didn't announce it. I just watched the number settle in my account and closed my laptop. Then my mother texted me about a designer handbag for my sister-in-law. $3,000. No question mark. I didn't respond. I opened a real estate app instead. And now, standing in that hardware store, my phone face down, I realized something had already shifted. They thought my house was available because they thought I was. I walked out to the parking lot, sat in my car, and didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there and waited. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in the car until the air inside went still and the initial buzz faded. Then I started the engine and took the long way back toward the lake. The road out there curves just enough that you have to stay present. Limestone cuts, patches of cedar. The water flashes into view and disappears again. I liked that about it. It didn't let my mind spiral too far ahead. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was late afternoon. The house caught the sun in a way that made the glass soften instead of glare. I stood on the deck for a while, listening to nothing but wind and distant boat engines. No notifications, no voices. That night, I went through my phone calmly. Missed calls, voicemails I didn't open, texts stacked on top of each other. My father, call me. My brother, what's going on? My mother, we need to discuss logistics. Logistics, that word again. Like this was already decided. I didn't respond. I made dinner. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. Then I sat at the dining table and opened my laptop. Not to distract myself, but to look at things I normally ignored. Mortgage documents, purchase agreements, insurance confirmations, utility accounts, all in my name. I read everything line by line, not because I doubted it, but because I wanted the facts to settle somewhere solid. This wasn't emotional. It was structural. The next morning, my father sent a group message. Short, direct. Come by tonight. We need to talk as a family. That wording used to work on me. It carried weight, obligation, the unspoken threat of being unreasonable if I said no. I noticed for the first time how carefully it was phrased. No greeting, no curiosity, just instruction. I replied with a single word. Okay. The drive back to Rollingwood felt smaller than it used to. Same streets, same trees, same houses sitting back behind gates and stone walls. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, my hands shook the way they used to when I was a kid and knew I was about to be corrected. I noticed that too. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. The lights were too bright. Everything exactly where it always was. The formal living room was untouched, preserved. Mark's trophies were still lined up, polished. No new additions for me. No empty space waiting. They were already seated when I walked in. My father in the center, my mother perched forward, my brother leaning back, arms crossed. No one offered me a drink. No one asked how I'd been. My father spoke first. Whose house is that? I answered evenly. Mine. Mark scoffed. You can't afford that. My father didn't look at him. He looked at me. Where did the money come from? I told them, plainly. My role at work, the acquisition, the bonus, numbers only, no tone. When I finished, no one spoke. I waited for something, anything that resembled recognition. It didn't come. Instead, I saw calculation move across my father's face. My mother glanced at Mark. Mark leaned forward. He said, "With the baby coming, Chloe needs calm." That sentence landed with weight, not because it surprised me, but because it clarified everything. My mother smiled then, the practiced one. We were just discussing how perfect your place would be for Christmas, and for them afterward. It makes sense, doesn't it? You don't need all that space. No one asked me. No one paused. They spoke as if the decision had already been entered somewhere official. I felt something settle, not anger, something cleaner. I stood up slowly. The room went quiet. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't here to explain myself anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue timelines or feelings. I just stayed standing. For a few seconds, no one spoke. My mother's smile held, brittle at the edges, My father watched me the way he used to when he thought I'd made a mistake and was waiting for me to admit it. Mark looked bored, like this was taking longer than he'd expected. I said, "I need to be clear about something." That alone made my father straighten slightly. I almost smiled at the reflex. "I didn't buy that house for hosting," I continued. "I didn't buy it for holidays, and I didn't buy it for anyone else to use." My mother tilted her head. "You're overthinking this. Families share things." I nodded once, like I was taking in new information. "Families ask." Mark exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." I looked at him for the first time since I'd walked in. "No," I said. "I'm being precise." That was new territory. Precision had never been my role. My father stood. "Listen," he said, voice controlled. "We're not questioning that you did well. But this?" He gestured vaguely toward me, toward the idea of my life. "This needs structure. You don't make unilateral decisions when they affect the family." I reached into my bag and set a folder on the coffee table between us. It wasn't dramatic. No slam. Just paper meeting glass. "I already did," I said. They all looked down at it. No one touched it. Inside were copies: deed, mortgage statement, insurance policy, utility setup confirmations, everything dated, everything finalized. My name on every line. "I own the property outright," I said. "There's no shared access, no contingency, no guest rights, no assumed use." My mother's smile finally faded. "Why would you bring that?" "Because you're talking about my house like it's a suggestion," I said. "It isn't." Silence again. Different this time. My father cleared his throat. "This feels unnecessary." I met his eyes. "It's necessary because this conversation keeps happening." Mark leaned forward. "You're really saying no to Christmas?" I thought about that phrasing. How quickly it turned into a moral issue. How often that had worked before. "I'm saying no to being volunteered," I replied. My mother folded her hands tightly in her lap. "After everything we've done for you." There it was, the line I'd grown up under. I waited a beat, then another. Silence as a choice. "I didn't ask for anything," I said, "and I'm not taking anything now." My father's tone sharpened. "If you walk out of here, don't expect things to stay the same." I nodded. "I'm counting on that." I picked up my bag. No one moved to stop me. No one apologized. No one congratulated me. At the door, my mother said, "You're being selfish." I turned back once. "I'm being consistent." Then I left. The drive back to the lake felt different. My hands were steady. The knot in my stomach was gone, replaced by something quieter. Order, maybe. When I got home, I locked the door, set my keys down in the same place I always did, and turned my phone off completely. Then I sat at the kitchen table and made a short list. Not emotional, just practical. Step 1, boundaries. Step 2, silence. Step 3, follow through. I finished the list, folded the paper once, and slid it into the same folder as the documents. Outside, the water was dark and still. I went to bed early that night, and for the first time in years, I slept all the way through. I didn't hear from them for 2 days. That was unusual. Silence from my family was rarely accidental. It usually meant something was being discussed somewhere I wasn't invited into. I used the time well. I worked normal hours, took calls, reviewed designs, signed off on a quarterly plan. Nothing in my voice changed on meetings. No one at work had any idea something had shifted underneath my life. I liked that. It reminded me that I had a structure that existed completely outside of them. Each evening, I came home, made dinner, and checked the same 3 things in the same order: locks, cameras, accounts. Not out of fear, out of clarity. On the third day, my father emailed me. Not a text, an email. Long paragraphs, careful language. He wrote about misunderstandings, about stress, about family traditions, about how pregnancy was a sensitive time, about how Mark had always carried responsibility and how this would help everyone. I read it once, then again, slowly. Nowhere in the message was a question. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to my personal archive folder, the same place I kept contracts and signed agreements. I labeled it with the date and his name. Not because I planned to use it, but because I wanted a record. That night, my mother called. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Her voice was soft, hurt, confused. She said she didn't recognize me lately. She asked where this coldness was coming from. I didn't return the call. The next morning, Mark sent a message, shorter, less polished. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I stare at the screen for a moment. Then I typed one sentence. "This is exactly the size it needs to be." I didn't elaborate. An hour later, my office building's front desk emailed me. They asked if I was expecting visitors. 2 people had come by asking for me by name, my parents. I thanked the desk and said no. I didn't feel panicked. I felt prepared. I walked down to the lobby anyway. Not to meet them, but to make sure the boundary was clear. Through the glass doors, I saw them standing side by side, my mother gesturing, my father speaking to the receptionist with polite insistence. The same posture he used everywhere. Assumption disguised as calm. I didn't go out. Instead, I emailed HR. Brief, professional. I let them know that 2 individuals might attempt to contact me through work and that no information should be shared. They replied within minutes, confirming. Process, systems, support. That evening, I updated my home security permissions. I removed emergency contacts that weren't mine. I checked access logs. Nothing unusual. Then I did something small but deliberate. I opened my calendar and blocked off the entire week of Christmas. No labels, just time. That night, my phone lit up again. A text from my mother. "If you don't let us use the house, people will ask questions." I read it twice, then I turned the phone face down. Outside, the lake reflected the moon in clean, broken lines. The house was quiet. Not empty. Quiet by choice. I poured myself a glass of water, stood at the window, and thought through the situation like a checklist. No shared assets, no legal obligation, no access, no response required. I had spent years explaining myself to people who weren't listening. I wasn't doing that anymore. I went to bed knowing the next move wouldn't be mine, and I was right. They came to the house 3 days later. I saw the notification on my phone while I was making coffee. Front camera, 2 figures walking up the driveway. No message, no warning, just presence. I didn't rush. I finished pouring the coffee, set the mug down, and checked the feed again. My parents. No Mark. No car behind them. Just the 2 of them standing there like they still belonged. I waited a full minute before opening the door. My mother spoke first. "We were nearby." I nodded once. "I didn't invite you." My father's jaw tightened. "We need to talk." "I agree," I said, "but not here." That surprised them. The house behind me was visible through the glass. Light, water, space. I could see the calculation flicker again. "I'll walk with you," I continued, pointing toward the edge of the property where the path curved down toward the lake. 10 minutes. They followed. We stopped near the water where voices don't carry and nothing echoes back at you. I stayed standing. They did too. No furniture, no home field advantage. My father started with disappointment. My mother followed with concern. Words like family, tradition, embarrassment. I let them finish. When they stopped, I spoke. This is how this is going to work. Both of them looked at me fully then. I'm not hosting holidays. I'm not lending the house. I'm not negotiating access. That decision is final. My mother shook her head slightly. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm organizing my life. My father stepped closer. If you keep doing this, you're choosing to separate yourself. I already am, I replied. I just stopped pretending otherwise. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, You owe us respect. I met his eyes. Respect isn't automatic. It's sustained. That landed harder than I expected. Not because it was sharp, but because it was true. And quiet truths are difficult to argue with. My mother's voice softened. You'll regret this. I shook my head. I've already measured the cost. This is cheaper. Neither of them spoke after that. We walked back toward the driveway in silence. At the gate, I stopped. There's one more thing, I said. You can't come to my workplace again. You can't come here unannounced. If you do, I'll treat it as a violation, not a misunderstanding. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. I'm not angry, I added. I'm done explaining. They left without another word. That night, I changed nothing. Same routine, same locks, same quiet. The next morning, I received an email from my grandmother, Helen. Short, direct. She asked if we could have tea. I replied yes, and when I closed my laptop, I knew the confrontation phase was over. What came next was resolution, whether they liked it or not. I met my grandmother 2 days later at her apartment, not far from where she'd lived for years. Same building, same elevator that took a second too long to close. Same faint smell of tea leaves and old books when the door opened. She didn't ask how I was. She poured the tea first. That was always her way. We sat at the small table by the window. Sunlight came in low and steady. No rush. They're upset, she said finally. I nodded. I know. She studied me for a moment. Not critically, precisely. You didn't raise your voice. No. You didn't explain yourself to death either. No. She smiled once, small, satisfied. Then she reached into the side drawer and took out a thin folder. Not dramatic, no ceremony, just paper. I've been meaning to update this, she said, sliding it toward me. Given how things are. Inside were copies, her will, a recent revision, dates, signatures, clear language. Everything substantial was left to me, not as a reward, as a decision. So you can build without interference, she said, and because you always showed up when it counted. I closed the folder gently. Thank you. She waved it off. This isn't a gift. It's alignment. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't need to. A week later, my father emailed again. Shorter this time. He said they were willing to move past things if I could be flexible. He suggested a compromise. A few weeks a year. Controlled access. Clear expectations. I replied with one sentence. No access. No exceptions. He didn't respond. Then my mother sent a message that surprised me. Not angry, not pleading, just sharp. You've forgotten who raised you. I read it once, then deleted it. Not blocked, deleted. There's a difference. Christmas came quietly. I didn't decorate much, just lights along the deck, a tree inside, small but real. I invited a few people, a colleague who'd stayed late with me more times than I could count, my mentor from my first job, my grandmother. We cooked together, nothing fancy. The kitchen filled with warmth instead of performance. Someone spilled wine. Someone laughed too loud. No one corrected them. At one point, my phone buzzed, a comment on a photo I'd posted. My mother again. I removed it without replying and put the phone away. Later that night, after everyone left, my grandmother stayed behind. We opened an old bottle of cheap white wine I'd kept out of habit. She took a sip and winced. "This is terrible," she said. I laughed. So did she. Outside, the water moved slowly. The house held the sound without amplifying it. Nothing echoing, nothing demanding. In the months that followed, my parents tried once more. They came by my office again. Security turned them away. They didn't try after that. The pattern finally broke when resistance stopped working. I didn't win anything. I finalized it. And by spring, the quiet felt permanent. I stood on the deck one evening, watching the light fade across the lake, keys in my hand, and realized there was nothing left to defend. That was enough. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Nothing dramatic, just predictable mornings. Coffee, work, evenings by the water. I kept the same routines because they worked. I cleaned on Sundays. I walked the property line once a week. I answered messages that mattered and ignored the rest. People sometimes ask if I miss my family. I usually pause before answering. Not because it hurts, but because the question assumes something that was never really there. You can't miss what you were never allowed to keep. My grandmother visits often now. We sit on the deck when the weather's good, inside when it's not. We talk about normal things, books, people we've known, small plans. There's no tension in the air, no performance, just time passing the way it's supposed to. One afternoon, while organizing paperwork, I found the old list I'd written months earlier. Boundaries, silence, follow through. It was folded once, slightly worn at the edges. I didn't need it anymore. Every so often, someone reaches out quietly. A coworker, a friend of a friend, someone dealing with a family situation that feels confusing but familiar. They don't ask for advice right away. They just describe things and wait. I listen. That seems to be enough most of the time. If you're listening to this and something about it feels close to home, you're not alone. Order can be built. Calm can be learned. And boundaries don't have to be loud to be permanent. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps more people find stories like this. I'd also love to know, what city are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? I read those comments more than you'd think. 2 more stories will be waiting for you next. Quiet ones. Thoughtful ones. Thank you for being here.